Hi, welcome to the Global Veg Fest. You have tuned into the second live stream by Plant-Based Health Professionals UK. My name is Dr. Leila Dehkhan. I'm a board member and the education lead for Plant-Based Health Professionals UK. If you missed my earlier conversation with Kate Strong, you can watch the recording later. I would really recommend it. She's such an inspiring woman and athlete, and I really enjoyed our chat together. Now I'll be joined by Dr. Nitu Bajekal. Dr. Nitu Bajekal is a senior consultant obstetrician and gynecologist in the UK with over 35 years of clinical experience in women's health. Her specialist interests include lifestyle medicine, polycystic ovary syndrome, endometriosis, period problems, menopause, precancer, complex vulval problems, and medical education. She is a fellow of the Royal College and recipient of the Indian President's Gold Medal. She is one of the first board-certified lifestyle medicine physicians in the UK. Together with her daughter Rohini Bajekal, Dr. Bajekal is the co-author of Living PCOS Free, which you can pre-order. Let's welcome Dr. Bajekal.
Thank you, Leila. Thank you, Pete. Thank you to Global Veg Fest. This is such an honor to be talking to all of you. And I hope that you'll find what I have to say interesting. I'm going to focus a little bit on reproductive health, also known often as women's health, and how lifestyle, especially a diet that is focused on plant foods, can actually make a big difference to how you optimize your health, especially your reproductive health, and maintain it as well. So I'm just going to have a little slideshow so that we can talk about the various aspects. But before I start, I just want people to be aware that when I use the word women, I want to be inclusive to anybody who has female reproductive organs or identifies as groups other than women. So people who are assigned female at birth. What I want to highlight here is that there is no aspect of health, including women's health, that does not benefit from dietary and lifestyle changes, not a single one. And this is at every stage and every age of our lives. This is true whether you use medications, whether you have surgery, whether you need vaccinations. Those go side by side, like lifestyle medicine explains. But dietary and lifestyle changes are always key, and you want to use them either on their own or alongside any of the other disciplines that you may choose to lean on. And this is especially true, as I said, for every stage and every age in the lives of people, especially in women, because that's what I'm talking about today. This is something I tell my patients all the time, that if you actually do not know how your organs work, where your organs are, it's very difficult to explain to health professionals what is wrong. And that is particularly true for reproductive organs. So it's really important because people often confuse the vulva with the vagina. They don't know. There was a survey of 2,000 women not so long ago in November 2020, where 1 in 10 could not identify any reproductive organ in the female body. 1 in 2 don't know where their cervix is. And that's important because cervical cancer is a killer and you should go for your cervical screening. 1 in 4 did not know where their vagina was. So, I could go on. But what I want people to understand is that for you to understand your body, you need to know your body better. Because if you can't explain that to your doctor or to your nurse, then you may be dismissed, you may not be taken seriously, and you may not be able to explain the right things. And so you may miss out on the right treatment or medication. And as I was explaining, there is not a single women's health condition. And we could go on and on. You can see how long the list is. Polycystic ovarian syndrome, endometriosis, fibroids. These are all conditions that you've heard about. And you think, oh, I can never have children. Oh, I have to have medication all my life. I have to have surgery. That may be true. But what you don't realize, and a lot of people may not realize, and health professionals certainly don't realize, is the huge impact that what you eat and how you live your life can make a massive, massive difference to how painful your periods are, how heavy they are, whether you are suffering from acne or thrush or having pregnancy-related issues, when you hit the menopause, when you're diagnosed, unfortunately, with certain types of cancers. COVID-19, we know that those who are on a plant-based diet have a reduced risk, while those with conditions like polycystic ovary syndrome have an increased risk of COVID. Vulval conditions, skin conditions, autoimmune conditions. Really, there is not a single area of your health that will not benefit from lifestyle changes and from dietary changes. So I just want you to understand that it's not comprehensive, this list, and we're not going to go into great detail, but there is no different diet for different conditions. It's the one and same way that we would encourage everybody to eat, because the science is behind it. It's not as if I'm making this up on my own. What I'm saying is that there is science and evidence, and that's what lifestyle medicine is. That's what eating the right foods and living the right way actually makes a difference. And we have plenty of papers and trials and studies. And we also have observational studies from the blue zones, which Leila may have spoken about before. So there are 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine. And lifestyle medicine is the use of evidence-based lifestyle approaches to prevent, treat, and sometimes even reverse chronic disease. And that includes women's health problems. And there are 6 basic pillars. The first pillar is, in my opinion, is probably as important as sleep. Sleep is very important, but I think eating the right foods is huge, and it's something that we can make a difference. And it often tends to have a knock-on effect. When you eat better, you tend to work out more. When you tend to work out more, you tend to sleep better. Then you tend to stress less. You tend to avoid excessive amounts of risky substances, and you tend to have more connection with the people around you. So those are the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine: predominantly a whole food, plant-based way of eating, moving your body regularly, and sometimes doing specific activity, which is exercise, which is slightly different from just physical movement, restorative sleep, sleeping for 6 to 9 hours, managing and identifying your stress triggers, because not everybody can get rid of all their stress. All of us have stress, but it's knowing how to manage it by eating the right foods, by walking outdoors, by sleeping better, by actually accepting that there are stress factors and what you can do by breathing and mindfulness and exercise. Avoiding risky substances. Whatever anybody might tell you, there are no health benefits from drinking alcohol or having excess amounts of caffeine or having or smoking. We know that caffeine, for example, in people who are trying to get pregnant or in pregnancy, can increase the risk significantly. And the Royal College is very clear that caffeine should not be part of your diet as far as possible when it comes to if you're pregnant. So, but alcohol as well, a single unit of alcohol can increase your breast cancer risk by 10%. And for every 3 units that a woman drinks, especially if she's in the menopausal stage, can increase her risk of breast cancer by another 10 or 12%. So really, breast cancer being such a common problem, you have to remember staying away from these. Even though you may get vegan wines and things, you need to be understanding that these are not health foods. And having friends, we know depression can increase our risk of stress and heart disease and cancers. So really looking at building positive social networks, doing community work, living a life where you lean on friends and family and the community is really quite important. Oh, sorry. So I'm going to just talk about a couple of areas, but I want to stress once again to anybody listening, however you choose to identify, even the men who are listening to this, that there is no different diet for different conditions. It's the same way that I would advise anybody to eat who wants to stay away from a hospice, not be diagnosed with dementia. Dementia is the biggest killer for women in the UK, 18% of all deaths. But polycystic ovary syndrome is a condition that is very dear to me. I have spent a lot of time in the last year writing about a very comprehensive, medically balanced book with all the information that you want to know about this most common endocrine disorder, but also understanding that actually lifestyle can make a big difference, especially diet. What is polycystic ovary syndrome? It's often interchangeably used with polycystic ovary disease or polycystic ovarian syndrome. It's one and the same. It's the most common endocrine, which is a hormonal condition, and it affects the way the ovaries function. However, it's not a disease of the ovaries, and that's really important because the latest research that's come out of the UK of 175,000 men, we know that men also display all the signs of polycystic ovary syndrome except for the way the ovaries function. So they too have type 2 diabetes, they too have metabolic syndrome and increased excess weight. But in women, they also, other than psychological factors and metabolic factors, there are also reproductive factors, and it affects at least 1 in 10, but possibly 1 in 4 women in many ethnic groups will have this condition, or if you're trying to have a baby, or if you're carrying excess weight. Up to 75% of women do not remain undiagnosed. And that's because there are so many different symptoms that women end up seeing a dermatologist, they may see a gynecologist, they may see an endocrinologist, they may see a fertility specialist, they may see a beauty therapist, they may see different, or their GP. And as a result, nobody connects the dots, and nobody really is there to help and join those dots. So it's really down to you as the person who it's affecting to really make that connection and seek the right help from an empathetic health professional. What really drives polycystic ovary syndrome and what really makes diet so important in this common condition is insulin resistance, where your body's tissues fail to respond to the levels of insulin that are normally floating around. So your blood sugar levels rise, and as a result, what happens is the pancreas starts secreting even more insulin, and so basically the tissues stop responding to the insulin, and as a result, the condition is known as insulin resistance. And this is usually because of either dietary fat, high levels of saturated fat, which are found in animal foods, and ultra-processed foods are also full of trans fats, but also because what tends to happen is the diet, 60% of the British diet has ultra-processed foods, which are refined white rice and white bread and lots of sugar, free sugars. So insulin resistance becomes a real problem because polycystic ovary syndrome, it then comes about because insulin also, interestingly, has an effect directly on androgen levels or on testosterone levels. And so insulin has many actions, not just in controlling your blood sugars. And when you have high levels of insulin, you tend to then have low levels of a protein that binds the testosterone, which is the androgen that you may be familiar with, but also it increases the secretion of these excess androgens from the ovaries, from the adrenal glands. And excess body weight can also play a very important role in PCOS. And of course, that happens. So people who have a genetic tendency or a family history of PCOS, it will tend to make things worse. So, it's like genetics loads the gun and diet pulls the trigger. And that was said by George Bray. And it's a very important thing to understand. You can't escape your genetics, but you can certainly modify your lifestyle and how you eat. And that may be whether you choose to identify as vegan or not. You need to understand what kind of foods will actually help your condition to live you the best health that you can, but also be the right advocate for the cause that you are have become vegan for. So the symptoms we were talking about PCOS very briefly are the hallmark are irregular or absent periods. You can also have irregular absent periods if you exercise too much, and that's known as hypothalamic amenorrhea, or you have an eating disorder. But the hallmark of PCOS is 2 out of the 3 symptoms, which is irregular absent periods and signs of androgen excess. So excess facial or body hair, acne, or female pattern hair loss, or the presence of little empty egg follicles, which are not true cysts, but seen on ultrasound. That's why the name polycystic ovary syndrome is not really true cysts. And then there are other symptoms. 50 to 70% of people may struggle with excess weight gain. Insulin resistance, as I explained, is both a symptom as well as one of the main drivers. PCOS is the commonest cause of anovulatory infertility, which means that you're not releasing eggs regularly, and just changing the way one eats and shedding 5% of body weight can help to bring your periods back and help you to ovulate regularly. Psychological issues are very often under-recognized in PCOS: anxiety, depression, obsessive compulsive disorder, disordered eating, binge eating disorders without purging, sexual dysfunction, darkened skin behind your neck, underarms, and groin can be a sign of insulin resistance, excessive daytime sleepiness, and breathing problems. So these are all symptoms of PCOS, which can really, while they don't kill you necessarily at a young age, what they do is they leave you very frustrated. So what we know, and this is not just a vegan group saying this is the international guidelines that lifestyle management, changing the way you think, and weight loss, lifestyle factors are the first line of treatment before you reach for medication, before you reach for anything else. You may need those to treat your diabetes. You may need it to get pregnant, so fertility treatment, but lifestyle. And remember the 6 pillars. So we have diet, we have exercise, we have avoiding risky substances, sleep, stress, and having a positive social network. And this is so important to focus on this, especially the what we eat, because you also have long-term effects of PCOS, which are a higher risk of type 2 diabetes. 40% of those with PCOS will be diagnosed with or 50%, half of the people with PCOS will be diagnosed by the age of 40 with type 2 diabetes. That is scary, as well as being diagnosed with diabetes during pregnancy, womb cancer, heart disease. These are all very real risks that go on even into the menopause. So what sort of foods should you be eating? While you may have already decided to go vegan for the animals, what is important to understand is that there are certain foods that are particularly helpful for reproductive health. And those are fiber-rich foods. And fiber is only found in plants, in whole plants and minimally processed plants. Fiber is not found in any animal foods, and very ultra-processed foods are very deficient in fiber. And fiber is needed to improve the gut health, increase the gut microbiome, and also help to trap excess estrogen, which is one of the problems in PCOS. When you have high levels of estrogen floating around in fibroids, endometriosis, PCOS, breast cancer, you want to eat foods that trap that excess estrogen so that it doesn't get reabsorbed into your body. So how does eating plants for PCOS help? It reduces insulin resistance. It helps you to lose weight without calorie counting, because these foods are by nature calorie light. They also are, they lower your inflammatory markers, and inflammation is one of the chief problems with heart disease, carrying excess weight, medical obesity. It helps to reduce oxidative stress in the way the cells are damaged normally. It improves immunity. We know that those on a plant-based diet have a reduced risk of getting COVID-19. It doesn't mean that you avoid your vaccines, but it does mean that you have better immunity if you're on a whole food plant-based diet. It also helps to reduce testosterone levels, improves your cholesterol levels, and helps to address the gut microbiome. So there are so many advantages of eating plants for PCOS, periods, for menopause. And as I said, there are no different foods. It's the same foods, the beans, the legumes. So what should you be eating? So your diet should be full of color: whole fruits, vegetables, legumes, lots of intact or minimally processed grains, 2 to 4 portions of soya. Really important. Soya is a bean, and it's really very healthy, with healthy plant estrogens, lots of protein and fiber. Starchy foods, sweet potatoes with skin, boiled potatoes with skin, nuts and seeds. I don't favor a very low fat diet. I prefer you to get your fats from nuts and seeds and soya and avocado rather than excess amounts of oils. But I do not recommend a very low fat diet. I know there have been a couple of studies, but that's not something I would normally recommend. I would also recommend that you make water the beverage of your choice and use salt, oil, and sugar mainly as flavorings. Word on soya: I know there's a lot of controversy in the vegan world. You can be rest assured that only 6% of soya is used for human consumption. It does not come from chopping down the rainforest. It is non-GM produced, and we have a sustainable roundtable of soya in the UK. I'm not part of it. I have nothing to gain from soya, but I do think it's so misunderstood, and it's such a complete plant protein that it's really important, and it really makes a difference. The earlier you start, to reduce the risk of breast cancer, to reduce the risk of prostate cancer, 26% reduction in prostate cancer if you eat soya regularly. It does not affect future fertility or reproduction, does not affect men. Everybody can have it. And the other important thing is it's very, very good for menopause as well, and it helps to reduce the risk of osteoporosis as well. So the reason why soya has been picked out as such is because it has got very healthy isoflavones, but in a slightly higher quantity than, say, chickpeas and things. So it's a very clever bean. It basically promotes the growth of bone, for example, and reduces the risk of breast cancer. So it blocks the effect in some tissues, and it mimics the effect of estrogen in some tissues, what is known as a selective estrogen receptor modulator effect. So in short, Ideally, you want to have 2 to 4 portions of soya a day. 1 portion is a handful. It reduces menopausal hot flushes. It has an anti-estrogenic effect on the breast. Taking even 1 portion of soya, so a few edamame beans for a child, or a small portion of tofu, or a cup of soya milk, will reduce their future risk of breast cancer and prostate cancer. There's a reduction for adults as well in colon, lung, prostate, and ovarian cancer. It has no adverse effects on men. It helps you to lose weight. It lowers your cholesterol levels. And we know that prostate cancer reduction risk is also there. What should you be eating? So rather than having Oreos and crisps and white bread, which are all vegan, what you want to really focus is on color. The more color you eat, the better you will feel, and the more improvement you will notice both in your general health and in your reproductive health. What should you avoid? So foods that contain very little fiber or no fiber, sweetened beverages, fruit juices, oils, extra virgin olive oil, small amounts may be okay, especially if you're trying to gain weight or if you're a child. But really, you can go onto my website, for example, and see I've got so many recipes, beautiful recipes with minimal or no oil at all. So avoid refined grains, avoid junk food, avoid ultra-processed foods, and if you are not yet vegan and you're listening in, certainly stay away from the animal-derived foods, because they also bring you a lot of harm rather than any health. I won't go into this, but the reason why you don't want to have this highly processed foods as well as the animal foods is because there are so many organic pollutants, there are antibiotics and various chemicals, but also what is there particularly hurtful to polycystic ovary syndrome and to reproductive health and fertility are advanced glycation end products, where these are glycoproteins or glycotoxins that basically where the protein meets up with the sugars when you barbecue chicken or you barbecue lots of either animal foods or even potatoes, for example. When they're cooked, they don't have as high levels as even boiled chicken, but basically they accelerate aging because they damage the tissues and damage the cells. They cross-link the proteins and cause havoc. Smoking does the same thing, and people with PCOS often have receptors that suck up these advanced glycation end products and cause even more damage. Same thing with the lining of the womb. So really, how to reduce advanced glycation end products? Choose raw foods wherever possible. Choose raw nut butters wherever possible rather than roasted. Eat low AGE foods, brown rice, mushrooms, whole grains, legumes, fruits, herbs, spices. That should be what should be in your diet, rather than lots of vegan pizza or vegan burgers. Fine for a treat, not great on an everyday basis. Change from high heat barbecuing methods or high oven temperature meals to lower heat steaming, stewing, and boiling. So remember that there is a difference. We want you to have a vegan diet because that brings the ethics into it. And when you bring ethics into it, you're more likely to stick with any lifestyle change. But you want to stay away from the ultra-processed vegan diet, and you want to move towards a whole food plant-based way of eating. So remember color all the time. Breast cancer, just a quick word on it. 1 in 7 of us, 1 in 8 of us will get a diagnosis of breast cancer in our lifetime. And there are some things that make it much more likely. If you have a high animal protein diet, if you're carrying excess weight, all these things increase the levels of estrogen in our body. So what then tends to happen is there is a perfect setting for developing abnormal cells in the breast tissue. So we know that those on plant-based diets, those who eat significant amounts of soya, those who have mushrooms, green tea, flaxseed have the lowest risk. Those who exercise have the lowest risk. And we know from nice studies, the Shanghai, China study showed that even if you're on tamoxifen, even if you have had breast cancer, those who eat the most soya have the lowest rates of breast cancer recurrence. So anybody who tells you not to have soya because you have got breast cancer or a family history of cancer, that's wrong, because these are plant estrogens that knock out the other estrogens that you don't want, so helping to reduce your risk of breast cancer. So, and that's the same for prostate cancer. There's no difference. So ways to avoid certain cancers: bowel cancer, breast cancer, ovarian cancer, womb cancer, prostate cancer, and lung cancer. Avoid alcohol and smoking, because between 7 to 13 cancers are linked with alcohol and smoking. Eat a vegan, whole food, plant-based diet. as much as possible. Keep those treats as treats. Regular physical movement, maintain a healthy body weight, and focus on your sleep. Identify stress problems, because we know that night shift workers, those who are very stressed, all these also increase our risk of breast cancer. Be social and attend your screening whenever you're called, because that's important. Follow the NHS guidelines. Remember the cancer busters. Eat your G-bombs, greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, seeds. So if you remember the G-bombs, that's greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, and seeds. Lots of soya, lots of flaxseed, lots of 2 cups of green tea, especially before lunchtime, because then it has caffeine in it, and turmeric and herbs and spices. My own vegan journey started in 2001 or so, 2002, when my daughter, who was 9, this is about 20 years ago, she turned vegan. We had a lovely rescue dog, and she connected the dots. And we now have, so he lived until he was 17, Guntu. My husband joined us. He took about 18 years to go plant-based, and that was because he became diabetic, and he managed to reverse his diabetes by watching a documentary called Forks Over Knives. Sadly, even though we were leading a whole food plant-based diet, we were vegan, and in those days there wasn't anything available. So that's what happened. But now he is absolutely, for the last 4 years, has never enjoyed such good health, and he's sort of a walking example of what one can do when one realizes that fish and eggs, which people often think as healthy, aren't healthy for you at all. And now we have these 2 boys who are rescues, and they are mostly plant-based as well. They do eat some animal foods if the neighbors give them. So it's really lovely to see all of us thriving on this. What I tend to eat in a day, I eat lots of fruit. I have a soup, baked potatoes, a couple of baked potatoes with baked beans, chia seed puddings, lots and lots of big dinner, because I tend to work. And so although you should eat earlier in the day, I tend to finish my meal by 7 o'clock most days, but that tends to be my main meal. Ideally, you want to eat your main meal at breakfast and lunch and follow the circadian rhythm. To summarize, plant-based nutrition, base your diet around whole plant foods, try to work out, especially do strength training. It improves insulin sensitivity, it improves menopausal hot flushes, it reduces cancer risk. Ensure you have a good sleep routine and not doing watching TikTok or Instagram. Manage your stress, avoid risky substances, and have lots of friends. Remember, the same diet that prevents hot flushes also is anti-cancer, also is anti-polycystic ovary syndrome, heart disease, endometriosis, aging diet, you can name it. And remember that the same diet that helps you with your health, a diet where you don't need to count calories, is a diet that also addresses some of the world's biggest problems. So being compassionate makes one feel good as well. And so climate change, reducing animal suffering, leaving a better world for the children who are already here, and reducing pandemics, that's what you can do by eating mostly whole plant foods. And I finish here. This is my older daughter, Rohini. My younger daughter was the one who, helped us go vegan. Rohini is a nutritionist, and together we've written a book, Living PCOS Free, which is out next month. It's a book much more than PCOS. It's for everybody, however you choose to identify, whatever health condition you have, because we talk about so much lifestyle and dietary approaches and myth bust all the way, throughout, and have a lot of case stories as well. So, Laila, I don't know if I've overrun.
Thank you. That was really useful. I'm sure our audience have enjoyed it, and those who will watch the recording will really benefit from it. Nitu mentioned soya quite a lot. If you join us at 1:30, we are actually going to have another 10-minute talk on soya. I hope to see you there. Thanks, Nitu, again. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.